Hey bag maker, today I'm going to be talking about the Gypsy Quilter pincushion slap band, new cork and other fabrics that I've added to my stash. The book review for tonight will be a book called Ultimate Modern Quilt Block Collection. Today's bag lab will be how to add a Sling Style Strap to a backpack, and there's a great giveaway at the end. I'm Sarah Lawson from Sew Sweetness. Thanks so much for joining me for Sewcial Sunday, my weekly sewing chat. Hey everyone, happy Sunday and welcome to Sewcial Sunday. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I see Dawn is watching, Melissa from Arkansas, Donalyn's watching from Honolulu, and Tess is watching from Massachusetts. So welcome everyone to the show. A couple of reminders before I get started. Just about everything that I talk about during Sewcial Sunday are things that I've purchased myself. So these are not things that I'm getting paid to talk to you about, but just cool things that I found that I'd like to share with you. And everything that I'm scheduled to talk about, I link to in the description. So if you're interested in finding out more about any of the books, fabrics, notions, or projects that I talk about during Sewcial Sunday, just check that link in the description and you can find out more information there. And are noticed to be aware of spam, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Facebook viewers, I never send private messages through Facebook regarding winning of prizes. So if you see anything like that, go ahead and report or block it. YouTube viewers, I never leave a comment, a reply to your comment asking for your either phone number, credit card number, asking you to wire transfer money, nothing like that. So if you see anything like that, report and or block. I always announce the giveaway winners' name verbally on the show, and we've also started adding the winner's name to the description of the show. So just be aware of spam. Let's be safe out there. All right, so let's get over to the notion of the week. This is something that seems relatively simple, but I kind of like it for having pins at the ready, or if you're at the machine sewing through a seam that you've used traditional pins on, helps you get those pins out of the way in a hurry. Danny's going to switch to the overhead camera. This is the Gypsy Quilter pincushion slap band. Actually, Danny, could you zoom in just a little bit more? So I've got these are my favorite pins, and they're called magic pins. And obviously, they stick to the magnet, and the reason this is a slap band, I don't care to usually use the slap feature, so I'm just going to go ahead and bend it, but it fits on your wrist nicely. This way, when you're sewing, you can have the pins where you need them or put them out of your way. So super simple. Oh, let me get that pushed down. Super simple. I don't know. I just really like having gadgets that make time in the sewing room a lot easier. So if you're interested in checking out more about this pincushion slap band, I've linked to it in the description. I remember, Danny, do you remember these from when we were kids? They were slap bands available in all different patterns, colors. Did you have any?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so did I. I had a whole bunch. I have a question for you. Let me know in the comments. I'm curious, how many hours do you sew in one sitting? So for instance, if you're sewing, are you sitting there for 6 hours, obviously getting up to use the restroom or get a snack? Or do you like to sew in smaller increments, maybe an hour or two at a time? If you're super busy, maybe you just get little chunks here and there. Let me know in the comments how many hours or how long you're sewing in one sitting. I'm really curious to see what everyone's doing. I used to like sewing for lots of hours at a time, 6, 7, 8 hours, staying up all night. That is not my habit presently. I try to make do with the smaller chunks. I used to not enjoy the thought of that, but here Diane says 5 to 6 hours. Christina says 4. Seems pretty reasonable. I'm trying to get used to the fact that sometimes I only have an hour or two at a time to work on something, and I'm trying to be okay with that, because in my head sometimes I'm like, well, I only have an hour, but that's not enough time to get down in the dirt and get into the sewing project. And honestly, it really is like an hour at a time. That's totally fine. So curious to see your thoughts about that. Violet and I usually watch TV shows or movies before bed, and the last couple days we watched two music related either movies or TV shows. So the first one we watched was Respect. It's about Aretha Franklin. It's starring Jennifer Hudson. We both thought it was awesome. I didn't know a lot. I knew some about her backstory, but I didn't know a lot, and I enjoyed Jennifer Hudson's an amazing singer. Obviously, Aretha Franklin is too, and it was an awesome movie. We loved it. We also started watching the new series. It's called Daisy Jones and the Six. Violet and I both read this book that it's based on, and not all of the episodes have been released so far, but it's about a fictional band in the 70s, and the style of the book is like interview style. Like each chapter is one of the band members sort of giving a fake interview, and they actually created an original soundtrack for the movie. The soundtrack is really good too, and when they release the new episodes, Violet really wants to stay up late watching all the episodes, but we've watched all of them so far. Highly recommend either the TV show or the book. Speaking of books, this book I got maybe a month or so ago, but I've been waiting to review because I think it's awesome. It's called Ultimate Modern Quilt Block Collection. Danny's going to switch to the overhead camera. It's basically a library of quilt blocks, and there's two options, either foundation paper piecing or traditional piecing. So at first when I saw that, I was like, well, how are they going to represent both in the same book? I'll show you as well as some of the projects. So here's just some examples. The patterns in the pictures in the beginning of the book are not patterns per se included, but they were all made from quilt blocks featured in the book. So if you wanted to replicate these, you could, because the blocks are featured in the book. So these are just some examples of quilts that were made with some of the blocks, and I really enjoyed that they were represented in solids, because quilts and solids are kind of my thing. This one's really cool too, just basically a basic repetition. Love the bright colors. There are actual quilt patterns in the book. Those are just some pre-examples. So if you've never foundation paper pieced before, there's some photograph examples of how to do it, and this is as simple as you could get for a foundation paper piece, and a really good way to practice it if you haven't done paper piecing before. And then here's some of the projects. So this first project uses 91 of the blocks from the book. Love this quilt. I love the layout. I love the border. Everything about it looks fantastic. What else did I want to show you from this? Here's some other different colorway examples. This is kind of a Christmas themed version. Here's the second quilt project in the book. Doesn't use quite 91 blocks, but only 5 blocks represented, but I think visually it looks really interesting despite only 5 blocks from the book. Here's some alternate colorways. And then the next project, I think this is probably my favorite. I love the colors that it was made into. Love the layout. The border's really neat. This one's called Treasure Island. Uses a few different solid colored fabrics. Kind of like that one too. I like some of the blocks that were represented. And then here's kind of an example of what the book means by having foundation paper piecing as well as traditional piecing. So here's an example of the foundation paper piecing with the numbers. This is the order that you add the pieces in. And I also bookmarked a page in the back. If you're using the traditional piecing, so they have all of the templates present. In theory, you could either print these or copy these from the book, or get the measurements and then just cut out from your fabric. And traditional piece, meaning like using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There's no measurements for these pieces, so there's the extra step of having to measure everything. But I think it's pretty interesting that both of the methods are included in the book, and I think it's a great reference for if I just want to make even a couple quilt blocks, maybe to feature on one of my pouch projects, or something smaller that I wanted to have quilt blocks featured on. So again, it's called Ultimate Modern Quilt Block Collection, and I've linked to the book in the description in case you're interested in checking it out after the show. So Danny's favorite part of the show, we'd like to invite all of the bag makers to stand proud. Let us know in the comments that you're part of the So Sweetness Squad. Danny and I are both super grateful that you've tuned into the show. Thank you so much for watching. Danny, are you ready?
I think you missed a couple sections. Boo.
I did. What did I miss?
New fabric.
I did. I sure did. I skimmed right
So
by
I'm not ready yet.
Not ready yet. Skipped right by that new fabric. So first, in the new fabric department, I wanted to share some new cork that we recently received in the shop. Danny's going to switch to the overhead camera. This is a really great hexagon print. The base is the natural cork fabric, and love the bright colors. I get questions about some of the printed corks as far as what solid colors go with them. So I guess I'll talk about each one. I don't have actually at home all of the cork colors that we have available, but I think the light green cork would be a pretty close match for this light green over here. Unfortunately, a lot of the other colors aren't a close enough match. For instance, the ocean blue is not quite this shade. So eggplant was one that I was going to recommend. The orange cork would be pretty close. I guess rose gold, well, I guess rose gold would be close to this hummingbird over here. Whenever there's not a close match to a color, I usually recommend going with a neutral color of cork, such as natural, black cork, fawn, brown, charcoal, anything that's a neutral color, just because sometimes if a color is not an exact match, it kind of becomes glaringly obvious when you try to pair a print with a color that doesn't match exactly. This next cork has some monarch and other butterflies on it, which I thought was really neat. For this one, I would say probably to go with a neutral like I was recommending before, maybe even a black, or black with silver, or black with gold. We do have a lot of neutral colors with metallic, like the black with gold. And then for this one, I don't think eggplant is an exact match, but I think it's close enough to pair with this one. The natural cork would also look great with it. I think that would probably be my pull if I was using this with another cork, maybe the natural cork. And we do have some more corks coming in later this spring. Some solid colors and some more printed corks. And then new fabric that I've added to my stash from two separate fabric lines. The first one is from Zen Chic, and I only ordered a couple prints from the line. I really love text prints, so of course I had to pick these two up, and Zen Chic usually has some really great text prints. I love the yellow. I super love it. I don't know why I only ordered a half a yard of the yellow, because I was looking to make a bag the other day and the half yard wasn't enough for what I wanted to make, so unfortunately I had to pick something else. But it's just fantastic, and the charcoal too. If yellow's not your thing, the charcoal looks really great too. And then the second fabric line is called Junk Journal from Kathy Holden, and it's sort of vintagey looking prints, some of them sewing themed like the buttons. I just really love the vintage looking style. I think this particular print would look great on maybe a pouch, maybe fussy cutting certain elements out of the fabrics that I liked, like the kittens over here. Some butterflies, moths, some more buttons I've got over here. And then two more sort of journal-y looking fabrics, which I thought were amazing. And we'll have some new zipper charms from Kathy Holden coming later on this either spring or summer. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know on the show as soon as we get those in stock. All right, Danny, did I catch up with everything that I skipped over tonight? I think I did.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're interrupting the show for a special report.
Because now it is time for Bag Lab.
All right, tonight's Bag Lab submission is from Ella, and Ella says in her email to me, "You've said on the show to go ahead and pass on ideas to you, and I thought of something I'd be happy to purchase from your website. a backpack strap bundle of patterns. I've seen a lot of people asking how to make bags into backpacks, and I know you responded by posting a demo on it, but I'd love to skip some of the custom calculating and get to sewing a little faster. Would you please consider putting together some backpack strap patterns? What I'd like to see in it are, and she listed a few things. She requested narrow straps, both regular and padded, wide straps, both regular and padded, a range of recommended lengths and hardware, such as for tall people, short people, large bags, small bags, a recommended range to place widths apart on a bag, one of those zippered straps that converts the straps to a single shoulder strap, a sling style strap that's padded, and a sling style strap with a cell phone pocket. I have so little time to sew that I'd be happy to pay for some of these measurements and recommendations. Sometimes figuring out all of these little bits really takes me a lot of time. Well, Ella, while I will not be charging for the demonstrations for these, tonight we're just going to talk about the sling style strap that's padded, but I will try to get to the rest of the items on your list throughout the year. I think it's really fun to add a sling style strap, and by a sling style strap, it's just a single strap that can be worn either on one shoulder or crossbody bag. It's really interesting to add that strap to other items besides a pattern that's specifically a backpack, such as I've seen in the past a couple of widget messenger bags made with a sling style strap, and it looked really, really cool. I was actually a little jealous that I didn't think about having the single strap on the widget myself. But I do have in the description a printable template for the sling style strap that you can print out on your computer. It's just 3 pages that need to be taped together. And I have a demonstration on how to assemble it. On the printout, there's also some additional materials that you'll need, such as the 1-inch wide strapping and a couple of D-rings. And then in this demonstration, I'll show you how to put everything together. In this demonstration, my base is the Park Sling backpack, but like I mentioned previously, you can use this strap as well as the rest of the instructions in this demonstration to add this single padded strap to the bag of your choice. So enjoy. Okay, now go ahead and pull out the 2 strap tabs, and we're going to press them basically the same way that we did with the zipper tabs earlier on. So wrong sides together so that the short ends meet. And then open out the fabric. Bring the bottom edge in toward the center crease. Same thing for the other short edge. And then refold and press one more time. Okay, I'm going to take these 2 little strap tabs over to the sewing machine, and I'm going to top stitch both of the finished edges using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and I have my stitch length turned back to 2 millimeters for this top stitching. Okay, go ahead and pull out your exterior main panel and the paper pattern piece. And we're going to be using the markings on the bottom that say strap tab placement to mark both halves of the fabric for placement of the tabs with the D-rings. Okay, so I'm going to take my 2 tabs and the 2 D-rings, place 1 D-ring on each tab and fold so that both of the short ends meet. And then I'm going to place that tab in between the 2 markings that I made, and there will be 1 on each half. Okay, I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and stitch down the raw edges using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, now take out two strap pieces, your two strap pieces, and place them right sides together. We're going to be pinning the outer edge, except we need to leave an opening for turning. So I'm going to leave my opening about right here, and I'm going to designate that opening with marking with my pen just as a reminder. So I'm going to pin the rest of the way around. Okay, we're going to be sewing this pinned edge using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now we're going to notch the curved edges, so that just means wherever there's a curve, cut a little V about halfway into the seam allowance. And if you prefer, you can use pinking shears to do this instead. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and pull everything right side out through that opening in the side. Okay, and I'm going to use my precision turning tool just to poke out all the edges gently. Okay, so we're going to give everything a good press, and we're also going to press the opening toward the inside by 1/4 of an inch. And I'm just using my fingers to roll out the seams. Okay, now you want to go ahead and take the foam piece cut from the strap. Again, this piece was cut on the dashed line, so it is going to fit within the seam allowance. And I'm going to go ahead and insert it through that opening on the side of the strap piece. So I'm going to push it all the way down so that it hits that seam over here on the bottom, and then just pin it in place to hold it while I get the rest of the strap inserted. Actually, I'm going to attach my bodkin over here just to pull this through. Okay, so if you'll notice, the foam piece is a little bit shorter than the inside of the fabric. That's to keep that extra foam out of the seam allowance when we're sewing the bag together. And I'm also going to put some wonder clips on that opening to hold it closed. Okay, so we're going to take this over to the sewing machine. We're going to sew the entire outer edge using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So sew that line of stitching first, and then we're also going to sew a second line of stitching. And that will be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So there will be 2 lines of stitching, and that'll secure the foam inside the strap. And it's also kind of a bit of a decorative stitch. Okay, and I'm going to lengthen my stitch length to 3 millimeters for this top stitching. Okay, go ahead and give your strap a good press. And then we're going to be attaching half of the parachute buckle. So the half that we'll be installing is not the prong piece. You can set the piece with the prongs to the side. This is the piece that we'll be installing, and if yours has a curved edge like mine does, you want the curve to be on the top like this. Okay, so go ahead and pull out your 4-inch piece of cut nylon strapping. And I always like to burn my ends after I cut them just to seal them. The important thing is though that you can only burn the ends of the nylon strapping, not cotton. So if you're not sure, skip the burning, but I'm very confident that mine is actually nylon, so I'm going to go ahead and seal the edges. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my ruler out, and I'm going to measure 1/2 inch down from the top edge. And I'm just going to go ahead and fold that to the back side at the 1/2 inch marking. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and slide the nylon strapping through the buckle. And on the back side, this loose end, I'm going to bring it up to meet that 1/2 inch marking. So I'll put another Wonder Clip over here. Okay, so on the bottom edge of the strap, I'm going to measure up, let me place that straight. I'm going to measure up 2 inches from the bottom edge and draw a line straight across. I'm going to place that nylon strapping at the 2 inch marking, and it needs to be centered. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my ruler and double check that it's centered. Okay, so I'm going to stitch a box with a square in it. So the box is going to be 1 inch away from this pressed edge. So again, I'll take my ruler and just quickly make a marking where that 1 inch is. So I'm going to be sewing 1/8 of an inch away from this top edge. I'm going to come down again 1/8 of an inch away, sew directly on the line, and then come up back up this side and then stitch an X through, and that just helps reinforce that nylon strapping on the strap. Okay, now go ahead and take out the remaining piece of the nylon strapping, and again, as long as you're using the nylon, go ahead and burn both ends to seal them, and the swivel clip. So I'm going to fold each short end of the nylon strapping toward the inside by 3/4 of an inch, but twice. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that 3/4 of an inch, and I'm going to fold it once and fold it twice. So on this end, I'm just going to put a Wonder Clip for now. Just leave that Wonder Clip on this end. On the other short end, I'm going to do the same thing with the folding, except the swivel clip will go on this end. So I'll just fold it the one time for now, slide the swivel clip on there, and then fold it back one more time. So I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine and sew 2 lines of stitching, 1/8 of an inch away from this pressed edge and also 1/4 of an inch away. Okay, now we're going to attach the second half of the parachute buckle. So this is the piece with the prongs. And if you'll notice on one side, there's little teeth right here. This is what grabs the strap after you adjust it and locks it in place. So on this end with the folded over edge, I'm going to go ahead and unclip that for just a second. And I'm going to go ahead and slide it through, starting on the end with the prongs. So the first opening right here. So I'm going to go ahead and slide that through. I'm going to slide it back down under that middle bar, and then I'm going to refold it. Let me move that down a little bit. So the important thing before you sew this edge down is to make sure that this locks. So some side release buckles look slightly different. The important thing is you want to make sure that it's not going to be moving. So when it's in this position, it should be locking. Okay, so I'm going to take this over to the sewing machine. Again, I'm going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from this lower pressed edge. And then I'm also going to sew 1/4 of an inch away from this lower pressed edge. Okay, go ahead and put this piece to the side. You won't need it until the backpack is completely finished. Okay, go ahead and pull out your exterior main panel and the strap, and this parachute buckle or side release buckle should be face up. So we're going to stitch the strap to the top edge of the exterior main panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my ruler and make sure that the strap is centered. Okay, so I'm going to pin this in place. We're going to stitch this strap down using 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then your backpack is finished. One more thing that you'll need to do after you've pressed your backpack really well is take this piece that we set aside earlier, snap it into the parachute buckle, adjust if needed, and that swivel clip just gets attached to either one of the D-rings on the bottom of the backpack, and then you're finished. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration, and like I mentioned, I'll get to some of Ella's other requests for straps and backpack straps later on in the year. All right, there were a couple of questions Danny mentioned that were coming up while that video was playing. Cindy says, do you ever use a clapper on those tabs? I actually do have a clapper. I need to use it a lot more since I do have one, but that would be a really great recommendation for that. Thank you so much. Julie says, why not sew or iron the foam to one side of the strap before sewing them wrong sides together? That's a really great question, Julie. I find that, especially in something so thin and not a lot of room for pulling it right side out, I felt that it was easier to just have the fabric to turn right side out rather than the extra bulk of the foam. You know, I'm trying to think if I actually did try that particular strap with the foam attached first. I feel like I probably did, and even if I didn't, I'm envisioning it being really trying to turn it right side out through, especially when the strap gets like really skinny, like the skinniest part of it. So that's why I sewed it first and then inserted it through that opening in the side edge. And Kathy says, perfect fussy cutting on the panda placement. I'm not sure if that was intentional or if it just happened. Sometimes I don't have quite enough fabric to fussy cut as much as I would like, but you're right, it was really nice that that panda ended up near that lower portion of the strap. Cindy says, have you ever put a pencil eraser on the end of your point poker? I do. It helps push those seams out easier to iron smooth. I haven't. That sounds like a really great idea. I do have, I'm trying to see if I left it on the table somewhere. That precision turning tool has that little metal ball on the top. Oh, here it is. Actually, Danny, would you mind switching to the overhead camera? We actually have these in the shop, but this is the precision turning tool, and rather than it being pointy on this end, it's sort of like a metal ball. There, that's a really great view of it. Thanks, Danny. It's sort of a metal ball, so it doesn't like push through or rip some of your seams out when you're poking the corners, but that pencil eraser is a really great idea for that too. And I also kind of use it to sometimes glide it over like the seam area too, to just like push it out really quickly, even if it's just not a pointed corner per se. But that's a really great tip about the eraser. I think, was there one more up on the screen while I was talking about the precision turning tool, Danny? Dawn says, what guide may there be used for 1/8 of an inch marking? That's a really great question also. If your sewing machine bed is like mine and doesn't have an engraving for 1/8 of an inch, I usually try to eyeball a consistent spot on my presser foot. So for instance, on my sewing machine foot, actually let me see if I could pull it off really quick to show you what I mean. Hang on one second, let me just remove it off my machine. Okay. Danny, if you wouldn't mind switching back to the overhead camera. So on my foot, I know you're going to zoom in for me just a second. So for my foot, I'm usually kind of eyeballing. So everyone's feet are going to be different. So obviously it'll depend on your foot. I recommend taking your ruler or a seam guide and finding where 1/8 of an inch is in correlation to your foot. For mine, it's kind of where this part, let me get my pen. It's kind of this area over here. So whenever I need to top stitch using 1/8 of an inch, since I kind of know where that is on my foot, I usually am looking for this area over here to come up against the edge of the fabric, the side edge of the fabric. And again, everyone's feet are different, so this will be different for your foot, but it might be different for your foot, but just take your ruler, find a spot. You don't necessarily have to make a mark like with a black marker on it, but just kind of eyeball it and keep it in mind. There's also some top stitch or edge stitch feet out there. Those might be helpful for the 1/8 of an inch as well. I guess I've always just felt comfortable eyeballing it, so I'm okay doing that with my particular sewing machine foot. Laura says there's 1/8 of an inch zipper foot for the Juki. That's a good tip for that. Laura, let me see if I know I bought it recently. Yeah, that's it. Danny, if you wouldn't mind switching back to the overhead. So here's my, I do have the hinge zipper foot for my Juki, which is this guy right here.
Pull them lower.
So here's my 1/8 of an inch hinge zipper foot for my Juki. And that's what it looks like in correlation to the foot I normally use. So that's the 1/8 of an inch hinge zipper foot for the Juki. And I recently bought, I think someone emailed to recommend this to me. So I have my Teflon foot over here, which I use for sewing with vinyl or any other substrate where it might, the metal foot might stick to it. And I recently bought the Teflon foot for the 1/8 of an inch, just in case I needed to sew either close to a zipper area, or honestly, I just kind of wanted it in my stash, to be perfectly honest. But that's a great tip, Laura, to use that foot as well. I completely bypassed that when we were talking about the 1/8 of an inch, but if you do have a Juki, that would be a great foot to add, not only for sewing with zippers, but to get that 1/8 of an inch without having to eyeball it like I normally do. All right. If you should ever have a question that I can answer in a Bag Lab segment, feel free to email me. My email is sarah@sewsweetness.com. I have a folder in my inbox to collect all of your Bag Lab submissions, so it might be rather slow going to get to all of them just because I have a good amount in my folder already, but I do save them. I think Ella's was from last year, so I do save them, and we'll be working through other Bag Lab suggestions as well as some of the other things that Ella mentioned in her email about the straps and the backpack straps. So while I was reading through Ella's email, she mentioned how to know what length of strap to make for either a short person, tall person, big bag, or small bag. So I was curious, feel free to answer this in the comments, but what is your favorite strap length? So when you're cutting out fabric for a strap, perhaps you kind of deviate from the pattern instructions. Maybe you cut a longer strap, maybe you cut a shorter strap. Let me know in the comments what is your favorite strap length. Maybe Danny could put a few of these up on the screen. And also, while we're talking about questions, if you have a question for me, no questions? We ran out of time? Oh gosh. I apologize for that. I'm glad we got to some of your backpack strap questions. I guess it was really exciting to talk about that sling backpack. And I think in a few weeks, I'll try to get to Ella's suggestion for the zippered strap that converts the strap from a single shouldered strap to the two straps, so you can have one on each of your shoulder. But thank you again, Ella. That was a really great question that you sent in your email. So Here's a few comments about the strap length. Windless Original says 42 to 44 inches. A 50-inch strap is another suggestion. Jennifer says 60. Diane says 45 inches. Nancy also says 45 inches. And Kathleen says 45 inches. So it looks like there's a bit of a variance. Barbara says 54 inches. And Terry says 48 to 50 inches if I am making it adjustable. Really great recommendations for the strap length. Thanks everyone for answering in the comments. So one more thing to get to. I apologize if I did not get to your question live, but I will be back again next Sunday with Danny on the show to be answering some more questions. One last thing is the giveaway, and as always, the giveaways are randomly drawn. We compile all of the comments that are left on tonight's show from Facebook and YouTube. You have until the end of the day to leave a comment on the show, and I will announce the winner on next Sunday's show. The giveaway for tonight is the Sky Harbor bag. The video and the PDF pattern plus a packet of soft and stable interfacing. If you happen to have this pattern and video already, I'm happy to swap out for a different one if you are the winner. And Danny put together a little slideshow of some of your Sky Harbor bag makes. Amy made this one with a really great, I love the heart and the star style rivets that were on the handles that were on the front.
I like the rainbow cork.
Yeah, I love the rainbow cork. Thank you. Annette made this one. I love the colors. They're so bright and happy. It reminds me of going on a picnic. Shanova made this one in a Tim Holtz fabric. I love his fabrics, and this is a really great representation or use of that particular fabric. Brenda made this plaid version and looks like with a black vinyl for the side accents and for the bottom and the handles. Gabrielle made this one. I love this floral print, and I really love the splatter black and white print for the sides. The bag just turned out amazing. Gail made this one in a really pretty rainbow colored fabric and a gold vinyl, and I like that she made the handles double-sided. Helena made this one in a faux croc print vinyl for the bottom, and then I really love how it kind of brings together the print and the side accents. Merlin made this one with an Anna Maria Horner fabric. Love this fabric, and her bag turned out great, and I think that's the teal marble cork that she used with that. Paula made this Halloween version. The bats on the hardware really caught my eye first thing, and that's a great Alexander Henry fabric that she used. Tracy made this one with a really pretty red floral, and love how this turned out. Also love the double-sided handle that Tracy made for her bag. And so those are some of your examples of the Sky Harbor bag. So that will be the giveaway for tonight. I have an extra question that you can answer for a bonus entry for that giveaway. I was curious. I was thinking about this today. What device do you usually watch Social Sunday on? Do you usually watch it on your iPad, cell phone? Perhaps you cast it to a TV, or you watch it maybe on your laptop. Let me know in the comments. I'm just curious where everyone is watching our show. So thank you so much for tuning in to Social Sunday. I hope you have a great week and happy sewing. Bye, everybody.